Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're going to continue. Hopefully, this will be the final part of our tour of the Marvel exhibit at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. So, this pic that you should be seeing should be a picture of the Daredevil costume worn by Charlie Cox, who is the main lead actor in the Daredevil Netflix television series. Um, I think it was a well done costume. I did enjoy looking at all the detail to the costume. Just a couple things about the Daredevil Netflix show. It's definitely probably one of my favorite Marvel produced properties I've ever watched. If any of you have Netflix and you haven't seen this show, it's definitely worth a watch. You can binge it. It's like watching almost a 13-hour movie. It's amazing. Much of the Daredevil mythology, some of his best stories, including Born Again, which I believe is by Frank Miller. You got a little bit of the Kevin Smith Daredevil flavor in there. So it really has really a well produced show. I definitely enjoyed season 2 the most. I think that's the season in which the Punisher shows up, as well as you have Elektra. So it was definitely worth a watch. And we'll move on to our next pick. And our next pick is a bullet hole hoodie from Luke Cage, the TV show Luke Cage. Luke Cage was one of the other Netflix Marvel properties, starring Michael Coulter, I think is the main lead in that. I really, really loved Luke Cage, both the first and second season. I enjoyed the second season just as well as the first, but I think that Marshall Ali's portrayal of Cottonmouth in the first season, it was hard to outdo that portrayal. Luke Cage has a great first season. Probably the back half was not as great as the first half, but I really did enjoy watching the Luke Cage character, who has been a pretty cool character to get to know in comics. I was kind of first introduced to the Luke Cage character through, I think, Brian Michael Bendis' Avengers run is where I kind of really got into the character. So it was really cool to see this character portrayed so well in live action. Next, here's a picture of the Luke Cage comic book display for the character of Luke Cage. Luke Cage's powers and abilities include being bulletproof. He has superhuman strength and healing. Those are some of the things about his power set. He's always been associated as being a partner and friend to Iron Fist. They formed their own little superhero team called the Heroes for Hire. So that's just a little bit about Luke Cage. Next, these are a few costumes from the Daredevil Netflix show. I think the pic on the right should be a picture of the Kingpin's costume, which I thought the Kingpin, the actor's name escapes me, I think, who played the Kingpin, but he did a great job with the character. Probably the best version of that character I've seen, especially on the screen. Okay, and this next pic is just a picture of a cool drawing of the Ghost Rider character. Ghost Rider, I think, in the movies has been portrayed by Nicolas Cage. I thought the first Ghost Rider film was okay. It was pretty well done. I mean, matter of fact, the feel of it could easily fit into the MCU if they ever decide to do that. But I did think the first Ghost Rider film was actually pretty good. This is just a quick picture of a Marvel display they had in the exhibit, which kind of displays a lot of the comics, a few shots of the artists. All right, so this next pic is a picture of a very recent Doctor Strange comic book series, which I actually collected. So it was kind of cool to see this artwork. This is done by the artist Chris Bacalo. The colors look amazing. The art really pops. So this is a really great shot of the Doctor Strange character, who we're going to be getting into next on this tour. So now we're going to be looking at a couple of the props and costumes from Doctor Strange, which was also introduced into the Marvel Cinematic Universe a few years back, starring Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. This pic should be a picture of the Eye of Agamotto, which of course houses the Time Stone, which I believe is one of the Infinity Stones that the villain Thanos is after in the Avengers film. So that's the Eye of Agamotto. Alright, so this is the costume display for the Ancient One, who was played by Tilda Swinton. I thought she did a pretty good job with the role. Doctor Strange was definitely an enjoyable Marvel film. I definitely encourage you, if you haven't seen it yet, to watch it. It's pretty freaky. It has a lot of great visuals. And I've always been interested in seeing how Marvel would do the character, because Doctor Strange could be kind of a hard character to actually create, being that he's a magic using character. So it was kind of cool to see Marvel finally introduce the concept of magic into their universe. And here's the amazing looking Doctor Strange costume, which I gotta say, Marvel's costume department, they always get the best people to do their costumes. This costume looks amazing, especially like the red cape, which is perfectly pulled out of the comic page. And the cape itself has quite a big role in the movie for those who've seen the movie. Alright, so here is the comic display for the X-Men, who hopefully, if time will tell, will now be a part of the cinematic universe. But for those of us who've been watching the X-Men in film, the earlier X-Men films were produced by 20th Century Fox. Some of them have been really good, and some of them are kind of hit or miss, but the X-Men is probably my favorite superhero team, probably next to the Justice League. So what you're seeing should be a picture of the first issue of X-Men, created by Stan Lee and drawn by Jack Kirby. In that first issue, it looks like they're going up against Magneto. Alright, so we're still taking a look at the X-Men display. Just a couple more cool facts about the X-Men. The X-Men became so popular at one time that their sales even started eclipsing Spider-Man. And this happened around the time when writer Chris Claremont took over the book. Because the early issues of X-Men, the sales numbers weren't too great for the first few issues, but later on, when they reprinted the early issues, it really started to get a fan following. And then when writer Chris Claremont came to the book, he brought in a lot of the mythology and lore and new characters that have kind of stuck with us even today. So the first team of X-Men, of course, featured Scott Summers, known as Cyclops, Marvel Girl, also known as Jean Grey. You had Beast, who was Hank McCoy, Iceman, who was Bobby Drake, and the Angel. So that was the first team of X-Men. But then later on, Claire Claremont came to the book. He wanted to make the X-Men more of an international team. So characters were introduced who were from different parts of the world. These characters would include Aurora, who is Storm from Africa. You have Peter Rasputin, who was Colossus from Russia. You had Kurt Wagner, who was the Nightcrawler, who was from Germany. And of course, you had from Canada, Wolverine. Wolverine, who we know became probably the most popular character on X-Men. And one of the most popular storylines in X-Men history is the Dark Phoenix saga, which this display you're looking at should be showing some panels from. The Dark Phoenix saga was probably one of the first big major crossover comic book story arcs. It also happens to be one of the stories that the movies have not been able to crack yet. I don't know what it is, but whenever they try to tackle the Phoenix in movies, it just hasn't been really done really well or true to the story. But if you ever want to read a classic X-Men story, I would definitely recommend picking up the Dark Phoenix saga. And this is just a picture of the X-Men drawn from Jim Lee. Jim Lee, of course, becoming one of the most celebrated X-Men artists of all time. Jim Lee, of course, right now is actually the main co-publisher at DC Comics. But when he first came into the industry, he earned a name for himself by drawing the X-Men. And to this day, he probably is the definitive X-Men artist, as the X-Men that he drew were kind of inspiration for the Saturday morning cartoon that came out in the early 90s. So Jim Lee has definitely had a great influence on the X-Men, and pretty much of what people, what a lot of fans see as the X-Men today is definitely from Jim Lee.